nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me
Hello, welcome to the Scottish Rugby Podcast, brought to you by the Scottish Rugby Blog. I am not Craig Manson. Manson is off at a National Hoover Salesmen's Conference this evening, so I'm Jonny McGinty. Thanks for coming along. Nice to see you all. We are live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitch. You'll also find us on Blue Sky, on Instagram, on TikTok, although full disclosure, I run all of those and I don't use the TikTok very much. I am joined this evening by the Snowdenest man in the Highlands, Mr. Allan McDonald. How are you, Alan?
I'm very well, thank you. I have, I managed to get out of the village in Skye that I was in with some difficulty, it's fair to say.
And also the snowed underest man in the Borders as he prepares for his big flip next week, Mark Riley. How are you, Mark?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
I'm up against it indeed, but as I discussed with Alan, I've been putting stuff carefully in boxes. By this time next week, I'm going to be throwing stuff at cardboard.
I'm glad it's just the three of us this evening, because the only other sort of snow lines I could come up with were both libelous and likely to get us banned from Facebook again, a la Mr. John Anderson. We are here for the next 40 minutes or so on the public Twitch stream. If you are enjoying it, you'd like to hear a little bit more, we are also on Patreon at patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast, where you can join us for what we're going to say, it's new here, for the price of a low-fat, high-protein, new year, new me, January instant meal. Let's try and keep it seasonal. For that, you'll get access to our famous or infamous, depending how you look at it, Hands in the Ruck section tonight, our preview of this week's European action, and access to our super secret Facebook group, which hopefully has been super secret for long enough now since he has accidentally gave it away that we could use that as a bit of a lure to drag people in again. We've got just a little bit of news to discuss this week, and then we will have a look at last weekend's URC fixtures all together on the public pod, and then we'll be switching over for our Patreons to get a preview of Champions Cup action and a little bit of what's been irritating us this week. That was all done, by the way, without the help of Craig Manson's cheat sheet. So I hope you're very pleased with me. If I missed anything important out, you can tag it in at any point. Okay, we will start with news. A little bit of coaching news first. Mark, I'll start with you. Siona Fukafuka's got his first assistant, which is great news for the Scotland women's team. It's Ewan Cunningham.
Yeah.
After the debacle with the Scottish women's contracts at the end of the World Cup, bringing in a guy who foisted very unsavoury contracts on Wales and then butchered their World Cup and got himself sacked is not perhaps the most PR-friendly hire.
Yes. It hasn't been widely well regarded, has it? I guess the only thing I could possibly say is I'm not sure how much he had to do with it, knowing what a cluster the WRU is. I'm suddenly conscious that we're on public.
A fluster club.
A fluster, yeah, that's the very one. Maybe he didn't have a hand in it, but it's still not a very PR friendly pick, as you say.
Not massively. I think those of the no down in Wales seem to suggest that the man responsible for the world's rapidest heel turn, Nigel Walker, was the person behind the foisting of the contract, but Cunningham was still the coach, and he's still the one who told them that they should sign it. Allan, a little bit less power with Scotland women as an assistant coach. Game-wise, rather than PR-wise, what do we think Cunningham's going to bring to Scotland women's setup?
I don't know. I mean, Wales had some. Hopefully, he'll get something that launches Scotland women's very, very exciting backline. Hopefully, he'll get them going and actually show something there. That's got to be the hope, hasn't it? Because we've got great backs, and actually, there's a pack that can just about support them. Stop me if you've heard this one before in various versions of the.
The
pack's probably better powered than it has been, so exciting times for the Scottish team. Hopefully, Ewan Cunningham's going to be good.
Yeah, and a segue so smooth it almost looks like we planned it, Alan. Even though I was literally writing these notes as we were watching the titles. Another piece of coaching news: as of Monday. Speaking of silky backs, Duncan Weir is in charge of the academy pathways at Glasgow. I don't know if you saw his post-match interview on Saturday night, Mark, but he certainly seems like he's a person who's got into it for the right reasons, and he seems quite passionate about the job he's been given.
Very much so. I only caught a bit of that, but I caught him. He was on the BBC rugby thing, and I caught his interview on there, and. Yeah, he genuinely comes across as somebody that wants to help bring youngsters through and be the best they can be. Not just somebody that's going into it for this is my next career step until I get out of Glasgow. But I mean, I think, if I'm honest, and I don't want to get too far into it because I'm sure we'll come to it anyway, but everything I heard from everybody else about him in this last few days has been how much he really cares about Glasgow as a city as well as the club itself. And yeah, I think he's very much getting into it for the right reasons.
Yeah, Alan, the line that really struck me on his, and it's when he was being interviewed on the pitch, so obviously it's a very emotional situation, but what he said to Ryan Wilson, I think it was Ryan Wilson, could have been Iona, was, it's been amazing. I got to live my dream growing up. I've played for Glasgow, now it's finished, and I get to let other people live their dream and bring those players through. Like, surely that's the sort of attitude that we want from the academy coaching staff.
Yeah, absolutely. And Duncan Weir's been there, been helping helping prep the team. He's clearly been a very positive presence in the squad, despite not getting near the team. Often he has not been pouty, not been upset, just been pleased to be there and doing what he can. And, clearly very much liked and respected by those that he's played with and for. And that's exactly the type of person that you want going into running your pathways.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Mark. The benefit of me being in charge is that we definitely will be speaking a lot about Duncan Weir in the next few minutes. But when Mackenzie Duncan was asked about him on Saturday night, what he said was very similar to what you guys have both said. He's very well regarded. He always goes out of his way to help the younger guys out. He's done really well as an older player, kind of helping the squad to gel. So I think big things coming for the academy. I personally am very excited. I think it's a great appointment for him.
Yeah.
One quick piece of player news, which affects, I guess, a couple of Scotland prospects. Elliot Miller-Mills, not a massively Scottish team related move, but he moves at the end of the season from Northampton to Newcastle Red Bulls. Allan, good opportunity for Miller Mills?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he plays a reasonable amount at Northampton, but it tends to be from the bench, getting them playing a bit more. As I said in the chat, I would have quite liked him at Glasgow and maybe sacking off Sam Talakai so that Sander had a wee bit more oomph behind him in terms of his backup. Obviously, Finn Richardson's a prospect, but Sam Talakai seems to be a very nice chap, but you never think, oh, great, Sam Talakai's coming on, that'll really shore up the scrum. You're a bit like, I'm going to watch these next few scrums through my fingers when Talakai comes on, unfortunately.
The flip side of it, Allan, that move for Elliot Miller Mills, though, obviously, is particularly with the way that Gregor Townsend's already involved with the playing staff at Newcastle, it's a bit of a worry what that potentially means for Murray McCallum, who, obviously is a great friend of the pod, looked at times to be a fantastic player, has been going relatively well at Newcastle, obviously was Scotland's big hope at tight head for a while, and now there's another Scottish tight head coming to Newcastle who potentially is going to bite into his playing time.
Yeah, but Miller Mills is 33. I realise that's sort of that's really puberty for a prop, isn't it? But I think it's a position with enough attrition, and Miller Mills is old enough that I think McCallum will still get game time if he's staying at Newcastle. Wouldn't mind seeing McCallum coming back to one of the Scottish teams either.
Maybe he's the one that's coming to Glasgow. There's a little bit of discussion to be had about what's happening with the Edinburgh and Glasgow squads. I think that will tie in with what we're going to talk about in this weekend's URC games. So I think we'll bounce straight in. We'll go chronological order. Edinburgh against Benetton to start with. A great win for Edinburgh, you have to say. That's a tough Benetton team. Without John Anderson here, I'm more than happy saying they're nothing like a joke team. They're a serious outfit. They've taken some big scalps this year. Their home ground is a fair fortress. So Edinburgh have done really well there. Mark, this could be a recording from last week, last month, last year. Pick your moment.
Yes.
But is this a turning point for Edinburgh?
God, I hope so. I didn't have time to watch the whole Edinburgh game back. I only watched the highlights back. And the problem I have is I still can't see an attack structure that is bringing their fast guys in. Darcy scored a try, but it was the Darcy does something amazing strategy. And also helped by a Benetton player, I can't remember who it was, not securing the ball. But beyond that, I mean, shouldn't be too down on it, because you're absolutely right. Beating Benetton in Italy is not easy now. You know, I don't think any of the URC teams are taking that for granted anymore. And I hope it's a turning point for Edinburgh. I was chuckling slightly because when we did the Christmas wish list, you know, what do we want from Santa? And I said any one of the Scottish teams closing out a tight game in the dying seconds. It seems like that's come pretty sharp for me. But that's not the one I was expecting, I have to be honest. But yeah, I think the weekend coming will be the teller about Edinburgh, because Gloucester being where they are in the English Premiership, or the Prem as we're supposed to call it now, Edinburgh should be turning them over. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think you're dead on with especially what we're saying about closing out a game. Allan, they did still look like they might be about to lose it. It wasn't comfortable for quite a long time. Do you think, as well as being a turning point in general to get a result like that, that not losing that game actually could make a psychological difference to Edinburgh? Because as we unfortunately know, 99 times out of 100 in that position, they are going to lose.
The question, though, isn't can Edinburgh put together a performance? We know they can. mean, they beat Toulon. And look, take nothing away. In every game, with a squad low in confidence, at a place where only the Stormers have won this season. Before this, I mean, there is absolute, it's a good performance, whatever way you slice it. The problem is, can they put 2 performances on in a row? And that's the thing. Not even where Gloucester are, they should be beating them. It's, can they do 2 performances in a row? And that has been their Achilles heel. And, it's a very Scottish problem, not a Glasgow problem, but the Scotland team have a similar problem. And you can do well on the day, but they don't back it up. Or they haven't. I'll be delighted if they manage to do it and prove me wrong, because I think, it'd be nice to see Edinburgh fans have a bit more to smile about.
Indeed. First time they've won away in Benetton, by the way, since 2017. So not exactly a result to be sniffed at for Edinburgh. I think they'll be pleased with it. In terms of the team that Edinburgh have got and the way that things are going, Alan, we kind of talked about what might be happening with the Glasgow and Edinburgh squads for the next couple of years. Cammy Scott's putting some great performances together for Edinburgh. We obviously have this rumour swirling that Adam Hastings is off to Montpellier at the end of the season. I think basically as good as confirmed. Do we think that Ben Healy's days in Edinburgh are over? Do you think we might see him in Glasgow next season?
I think he's going to be coming down the M8, isn't there? There's going to be a Ginger Munsterman coming down the M8. I can't. I think he's too good a player to be put on a scrap heap. I think his confidence is low for whatever reason. We all have our opinions, and I think we're probably of a mind with that one. I mean, I suppose would his style suit Glasgow, but actually it might give a plan B. It might give a plan B. And yeah, I think he comes to Glasgow. Otherwise, you've only got Dan Lancaster and Charlie Savala who can play 10. So Healy would be the obvious choice.
Yeah, with Hastings is going to be a huge loss for Glasgow. Like there's no two ways about it. From what we've seen of Dan Lancaster this year, and Alan, I know you and I disagree. Oh no, it was Fergus Burke you and I disagreed on. I feel like we're possibly on the same page on Dan Lancaster.
I just think you're a bit early saying Burke is terrible. That's all I'm saying. He's a young player.
I didn't say he was terrible.
Very much not the answer, I think, was the quote.
Well, yeah, but you didn't give me a chance to see what the question was.
Scotland's next 10, I think, was the question.
I think Glasgow probably do need that depth. We all feel for Ben Healy at the moment, but having watched Cammy Scott quite a lot this season and seen him in person at the 1872, I think he looks like he's the answer for Edinburgh going forward, certainly. Which, Ross Thompson gets a start this weekend. He's proven himself in the past in Glasgow. He's had some flashes in Edinburgh. Healy almost certainly is the odd man out, Mark. You would.
Yeah. Healy, I seem to recall, Healy played well when he first arrived.
Healy kept Edinburgh in games when he first arrived with his goal kicking.
Yeah, his boot and his place kicking kept Edinburgh in games like Patterson's used to in ours in the early noughties. But yeah, like you say, for whatever reason, the last couple of years he hasn't had the opportunity. Which is strange, because I would have thought that somebody with that accurate of a kicking game would have actually suited a more forward-oriented style that Everett seems to have Edinburgh playing. But I don't know what else is going on behind the scenes, obviously.
Those that know have a suggestion as to what might have caused Ben Healy's fall from grace at Edinburgh, and the solution to that looks like it might be a little bit further away this week than it was last week, Alan. Do we think it's a stay of execution for Sean Everett with winning that game?
I think do we really believe Sean Everett wouldn't get till the end of the season? It looks like he's going to get to the end of his contract. SIU appear to be allergic to paying out fees. And I think he'll get to the end of the season and not a second more.
I wish I had your confidence. I genuinely, I always thought he'd make the end of the season. As much as I'd like to have seen him gone before the start of the season, but I think he'll be here till the end of the season, and I'm genuinely concerned that he might get an extension next
We
season.
hear extension.
A year's extension or something, yeah.
I was wondering about hair extension, or a wee pool house put onto the house or something like that.
Out of interest then, because we've got some of Sean Everett's comments to discuss before we move off of Edinburgh. We've spoken about this with Gregor Townsend. Let's speak about it with Sean Everett. With you first, Alan. How bad would Edinburgh's season have to be at the end of this year for Everett to not get extended?
I just don't see him being extended. I think unless this is the turning point for Edinburgh and they put 3, 4, 5 performances together, go on a run, and I'm not talking about 3, 4, 5 wins. I'm talking, there's a couple of European games coming up, and not expect them necessarily to win, but to have a performance to look like they're in the hunt. Unless they do that, I don't see him being extended. I think it's I just think it's all fluff and never arriving, so to speak.
Mark, you're less confident that he's gone at the end of the season. What would need to happen for him to go?
Yeah, I'm kind of less confident on the basis that I think if they make the top 8 again, I think it's a possibility that, and I think I've said this on the pod before, that Everett is on some kind of KPIs he's got to meet, and I think one of them will be, sorry for people that are not in that kind of frame, key performance indicators, and I think one of them could easily be making the top 8, and I think if he does it, I mean, I'm looking at the team at the weekend, right, and he's starting James Whitcomb and Harry Morris, and he's got a debutant on the bench who's never played for Edinburgh before in a European game. Now I know it's Gloucester, but it's also at Kingsholm.
They've already been nilled. Edinburgh have already been nilled in Europe. Like, this isn't like we're set up for the next round, so let's rotate a little bit like some of the French teams do once we get to round 3 and round 4. But it's also not like we've been panelled twice and we're out of it, because they took a bonus point away from Toulon at home. So
yeah, absolutely.
The way that this competition goes, Edinburgh will not get a good last 16 place if they get a last 16 place, but they're not out of the last 16 yet. So to be tanking seems silly. And I don't think, I mean, Gloucester are bad, but I don't think they're so bad that Edinburgh could play the reserves against them, Alan.
No. And, just to go back to what Craig's saying about KPIs, I think KPIs matter.
Okay.
Oh, goodness.
That's all right. We're all getting on it.
Mark's more here. Sorry, poor Craig's catching strays and he's not here. But I think with what Mark said about KPIs, I think KPIs matter about staying in your job, or about an auto renew of your contract. If his contract is up, they don't have to honour what the KPIs are. They can say, no, sorry, we're going in a different direction. And I'm hoping that they do. I do think, like you, Mark, I think he's been told what to do around the URC, and Europe's a bit of a sacrificial lamb, because he's sending out. It just feels a bit like cannon fodder going out, doesn't it?
And Brian,
the game's at the Hive, though.
Brian is rightly pointing out on text as well that the Edinburgh game is at the Hive. I even have that in my notes and got it wrong. So going back to what we were saying earlier about how I waste my time taking notes.
Before we move off Edinburgh, let's have a quick conversation about Sean Everett being in the press this week, saying him and Duhan van der Merwe have had a conversation about Duhan's performances and what he needs to do, and he knows what he needs to do, and he needs to be getting involved, and he's not doing the things he need him to do. Now, Duhan is charitably not well known for coming off his wing looking for work in the way that, say, Darcy is. But if you have a runner with the power and X factor that Duhan van der Merwe does, and you're the person whose job it is to decide who gets the ball when, and you're going out into the press and saying Duhan's not trying hard enough and he needs to be getting the ball more, that feels a bit rich to me, Alan.
Yeah, I suppose the only defence to that would be there are plans for Duhan to get on the ball more and he's not doing it. That would be the only defence of that. Still a bit odd to come into the press and say that. That would normally be a quiet word, and potentially if it keeps happening, a bit of a noisier word between coach and player. Yeah. And it would be a justification of people saying, well, why isn't Duhan playing? Well, because of this. But he's picked, and he's saying he needs to get involved more. So it just feels a bit of flim-flam of a coach that's
very interesting approach.
Yeah.
We'll stick with wingers because we'll go on to Saturday night's game at Scotstoun. As expected, extremely comfortable win for Glasgow. Quite a rotated side, but some regulars in there, and they made really short work of Zebri. The conversation that everybody is having is around one person, Mark. Jamie Dobie, best winger in Scotland, best winger in the URC, or best winger in the world?
His performances at the moment, you could certainly argue he's the best winger in Scotland at the moment. His performances over the last 2 or 3 games have been absolutely superb. I could easily see an argument for starting him and Stein on the bench for him and Stein on the wings for Scotland, but I think Dobie's flexibility, I think, is probably cursing him to a bench slot. For me, our back three remains Stein and Darcy and Kinghorn, with Dobie on the bench. Because bringing Dobie on, the cover he gives at scrum half as well as wing is superb. But I think I was saying, I can't remember if it was you guys I was chatting to or if it was on one of the socials, that the speed with which Glasgow are able to play when they have 2 scrum halves on the pitch. I don't know if that's something that Tooney is looking at, but I think that makes a significant difference.
Alan, that's exactly the question I was going to ask you. Would that be wasted on Scotland? Because in particular, when it's Jamie Dobie and George Horn, Glasgow are lightning. And like Mark says, that doesn't seem to be something that Gregor Townsend and Scotland are interested in. So is Jamie Dobie doing all this work for nothing because what Gregor Townsend wants to do is not what he's showing he can do at the moment?
I don't know. I mean, it's a long time from the Autumn Nations series to the Six Nations. Gregor will have changed his philosophy now. We want to play rugby 3 times in that time, won't he? I don't know. The difficulty is, up until recently, you'd have thought you might have been weakening the wing position to do that. I think now we've got the argument that we're definitely not. And it gives you the opportunity of having Darcy on the bench, which would normally be a bit of a luxury. Darcy is you're having someone that just plays one position on the bench. But if you've got Darcy on the bench, Jamie Dobie in the wing, you've covered scrum half. And the thought of Darcy coming on and running at tired defences with a point to prove is quite interesting. So I think Dobie's now at the point where, is he as good at wing as he is at scrum half? I think he probably is. I think he's genuinely the player that plays as well in both positions, and that, yeah, I mean that does potentially look at bench spots, but it does open up other things because we know Dobie can do 80 minutes. You move him, start him at scrum half, move him to the wing, start him at the wing, and have him to be able to move in at the scrum half, or just keep him on the wing and let him do his thing as we try and keep the game fast.
Yeah. We will talk about the man who robbed Jamie Dobie of another well-deserved Player of the Match award on Saturday night, I think, because we have to, with ultimate disappointment that John and Ian aren't here, because this could have been the third ever standing on the chairs moment, I think, that I can remember after Pete Horn and Tommy Seymour. The final appearance...
I'm not sure it can take it.
The final appearance of Duncan Weir at Scotstoun on Saturday night. Mark, we've obviously spoken about it a little bit already when we spoke about his move into coaching. It was just 5 minutes of relentless laughter from the commentary box for the last 5 minutes of the game. Was it the perfect ever final Duncan Weir game?
Genuinely, I was in exactly the same position when I watched it live. I was laughing my head off. It was genuinely
so were we in my house.
And I watched the game again just an hour or so ago. I flicked through it to see key points, and then I watched the last 15 again, basically, when he came on. And I had exactly the same reaction. I was still laughing my head off and enjoying it. It was,
for anyone who didn't see it, he came on with about 20 minutes left, almost instantly dislocated his finger.
Yeah.
Kicked all his kicks, made a try running the gamma line, and then quite freely said to Ryan Wilson after the game, "I've never run that line before in my life, and I'd have run it a little bit more if I'd known I was going to score from it." Tore his hamstring again, running it in, having torn it 3 weeks ago and not told anyone, and just rehabbed it as hard as he could so he could get out to the game, and spent the last 3 minutes just standing on the 22, completely unable to move and shouting at all the boys around him that he couldn't move. It was about as perfect a last showing of Duncan Weir as you will ever see in your life. And if you didn't see the game, for the last 3 or 4 minutes, Ryan Wilson and Andy Good in the commentary box just could not stop laughing. And I think at one point Wilson said, "Listen, I'm really sorry, this has nothing to do with the game, but we just can't stop watching Dunky." And it was absolutely perfect. I think the sort of outpouring of emotion and some of the things that the guys said about him when they were getting interviewed, again, we've spoken about this already, how well he's going to suit the coaching job. But Allan, he is so well thought of in Glasgow, and it was really nice to see him get that final opportunity.
Oh, without a doubt. And, everything they did round it, like, all the players coming out in Cambuslang tops to give him a guard of honour, having the P1 team from Cambuslang as his guard of honour onto the pitch. He's a boy from Cathkin High School, not a private school, not a public school, who's come, played at the highest level, had a really long career, finished at the club he started at, admittedly with sojourns at Edinburgh and Worcester, but just really nice. And actually, we often are critical of Scottish rugby and SRU for not getting things right, but they got that right. It was really lovely to see.
One of my absolute favourite moments that I realised live, I clocked it live and then saw it again on the playback, is Franco Smith's reaction when Meatball scored the try. For Mr. Deadpan Unemotional, he was absolutely overjoyed. And I think that in itself speaks volumes.
He cried at the end. I've never seen Franco cry before. I didn't see him smile when Glasgow won the URC. I saw him full-on belly laughing when Meatball scored and then crying when the game was finished. Yeah. And that basically tells you all you need to know about Duncan Weir. I think he's been a fantastic servant. I did think some of the stuff he said about broadening his horizons, going down to Worcester and getting out of a Scottish rugby atmosphere was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He actually used the phrase, and I think we've used it as well. He said, breaking the bubble of Scottish rugby.
It'll be interesting to see if that's something he brings to the academy role, because I think as much as his job is going to be to develop the academy at Glasgow, he's looking after the young players. And I think there are some young players where you might want someone to say, have you considered maybe going away for a year or two? On Saturday afternoon, I watched Perpignan beat Toulouse, and Jamie Ritchie was incredible. He's played himself back into Scotland contention in the last year, going to Perpignan, and that's not going to an all-star team. That's not what Blair Kinghorn's done, and not what Finn Russell's done. He's going to a team that's fighting relegation from the top 14, and he was fantastic. And they beat Toulouse at the weekend. So I think it's something that more people kind of really need to look at, and Dunkey was very open about that in some of his interviews this week. So that'll be interesting, I think. I think on the pitch, though, a big deal for Glasgow. That was a very heavily rotated forward pack. And with the caveat, Alan, that it was Zebri, there didn't look to be a massive step down from what we've seen from Glasgow starters this year.
No, the Zebri caveat's a significant one, but we've seen teams pick a young team and slip in the banana skin. Relevant given the colour of Zebri's tops, of course. But I think, Glasgow were in control of that all the way through. I never felt in question, to the point where they brought Dunky Weir on slightly earlier than I thought they would have done. But obviously.
Yeah, I think it was still only, was it 14-10, I think, when Dunky came on? It very much wasn't like get out there and take your last 10 minutes. There was still work to be done, and he did really well. The forwards obviously helping him out. Mackenzie Duncan, who we spoke about earlier, still looks like a fairly solid prospect. So Glasgow, I think, even as they rotate a bit, it's salved things a little bit from the last time Glasgow rotated, which obviously was that Scarlets game that we'd probably rather not talk about, Mark. But I think Franco's sort of learning what rotations he can do and keep things ticking over.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't like to think about the Scarlets game because genuinely I can't find anything sensible to say about it beyond it was a complete aberration even for a rotated Glasgow team. But that said, there were still some youngsters out there. I mean, I was saying, Seb Stephen played well at hooker. Kerr Yule did well in the centre. These are young guys coming in. But again, it's not their first game. They've had opportunities off the bench. Franco's very, very good at managing these players in. That said, he still had some more experienced guys on the bench, and Glasgow scored 21 of their points in the last 7 minutes.
But stronger teams usually score more and pull away as the team that's been doing the rope-a-dope struggle. You know what I mean? As their fitness goes down.
Yeah.
And I mean, but also it wasn't like they were bringing on Xander Fagerson or anything. Do you know what I mean? It still wasn't. It wasn't the 1872 bench where you were watching Glasgow get parity in the forwards with Edinburgh, or even slightly dominate them, and then thinking they've got 6 of the best forwards on the bench. They're absolutely going to malky them.
Yeah, that second 1872 game, I said this in the secret Facebook group, very much looked like Xander had sat at home for 6 weeks and heard people speak about Ollie Blythe Lafferty and heard people speak about all the forwards that are coming through, and he came off the bench in that 1872 game and just went, nah, watch this.
Yeah.
It's nice to see him get a couple of weeks off. I think before we wrap it up on this, the other thing to talk about was Sione Tuipulotu talked about it after the Toulouse game. We've just mentioned there 21 points in the last 7 minutes. Not enough is said, especially when we talk about the potential of Jamie Dobie going 80 minutes in the Six Nations, playing 2 positions in the Six Nations. Not enough is said about the fitness that Glasgow have this year. Like the engines on some of those players are absolutely phenomenal. And I've mentioned it to my own kids team because they whine like nothing on earth about fitness. And so I was able, after the Toulouse game on the Sunday morning, to go with my phone and go, look what Sione says about how being fit helps you win games. And I think that is key. If Glasgow are going to keep playing as fast as they are, Alan, that they are the fittest team in the league and they've got to keep that going.
Yeah. Was Franco not pretty harsh on quite a lot of players on their kind of fitness and ideal body weight when they first came, and there was some pretty. My understanding was that he was pretty uncompromising on that, but the players that knuckled under are now seeing the benefits of that. Because you're right, scoring late on, that is fitness. It's fitness. It's fitness, and it's nothing but fitness.
Yeah.
Well, a bit
And
technical.
the last try was Dobie and Stafford, who both played 80 by that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
All right, listen, we will wrap it up there for the public pod. We're going to jump over to Patreon. We'll have a chat about what's going to happen this weekend. We're obviously back to Champions Cup action for both teams. Bit of a different outlook into what's needed this weekend. So if you fancy a bit of that, we'll be over on Patreon, patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast, and you'll get that for the price of back to regular non-festive takeaway chain coffee. Hopefully we'll see some of you over there. We'll get the conversation going, and we've got a fair bit of hands in the ruck to discuss. But for now, it is bye from me, and it's bye from Mark.
Why not?
And Allan.
Right.
Bye, everyone.